Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Mortgages and Markets. As usual, we've got Sam Vakili. We had to do a draw to see who's going to be on the show this week. And congratulations, Sam. You win, I think.
Thank you so much.
Win is
Applause,
right. That's
applause.
the word we're using, right? Win?
Yeah, I
All
would
right.
go with win.
Nice.
It's a W.
Now, listen, I got to be honest with you. You got to step up your game, brother. The background, I don't know. I'm not feeling it, man. 2 weeks in a
No,
row. I honestly think there are people who tune into this just to see what room you're in.
I got to spice things up. You're right. I
All right.
apologize. I'm lacking.
All right.
I'll step my game up.
Let's pick it up. Pick this up. All right. Good talk on that. All right. So listen, let's get right into, there's two main topics I want to talk about today. One, we're going to talk about the exciting world of bond yield curves and recovery and stuff like that. And then we're going to switch it up and we're going to talk about the NCAA because yes, they are south of the border. They are college sports, but it is a booming business that ain't running this fall. So we're going to talk about that second, but to start, I'm just going to share my screen here for all of our thousands and millions of expected YouTube watchers. So
Billions and billions, as Trump says.
yeah, that's right. My bad. Absolutely. All right. So of note, what we are now, sorry, I know my screen's going up and down here. So we're hearing now economic recovery underway, but risks abound. It's kind of like you are running through a rose garden, a beautiful rose garden full of landmines. I don't know. That's kind of how this strikes me a little bit. So it's just some very quick highlights. So this actually surprised me a little bit. A number of U.S. states are finally getting their coronavirus outbreaks under control, but measures to curb this virus's spread have dented the recovery's momentum. I don't know if these guys have been to Florida or Texas lately, but it's
Clearly not.
yeah, not going well. But having said that, you know what? I don't know if we're getting into a political game down there because Florida and Texas are so important to the election down there. I just don't know if maybe that's got a lot of focus because I'm guessing there's probably a lot of states that are getting a little bit better. I don't know. What do you think? What are you hearing down there?
Yeah, I mean, I would assume that I shouldn't say assume. I hope that they're starting to get things under control. But I also saw something earlier this week stating that there might be noise in the numbers because the testing has gone down. And I don't know if that's an intentional play. Like you said, we have an election that's upcoming. We're now, 3 months away or just about. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of moving pieces that I don't know how much credence I put into that. And then the other curiosity is you're seeing in the other side of the world spikes that are starting to start. Melbourne's going through a bit of a tough time in Australia.
Yeah.
New Zealand, which has been kind of seen as a spot that's kept things under control, is starting to have a pocket. So it seems
I
to be
heard
like
about New Zealand. That's kind of creepy that they've been doing so well, and all of a sudden, a family
out
had
of
it, right?
nowhere,
Yeah.
right? So it shows how quickly things can turn. And I know on that side of the world, things are a little bit colder. So I don't know. Maybe there's a
That's a good
relationship.
point too.
I'm not
Yeah, it's a
sure.
good point too. We're all becoming like armchair scientists, right? So
Of course, a
yeah,
zoologist.
yeah. So Canada has done a better job of keeping the case curve flat. Say that 5 times fast. And then they're seeing a sizable rebound in Q3 GDP. And then this is also no shocker. They're keeping interest rates low. I don't think we're going to see a rate jump anytime soon. We just need to make sure this economy can be propped up until things start to recover. But you know what? Having said that, listen, my massage therapist, he just left the industry completely into something different. I have seen the yoga studio downtown. Don't worry, don't go there. My wife told me they're now considering shutting down. People are skipping. Actually, my wife's osteopath, he's now left town. So I'm
Oh,
wondering, yeah, it's like healthcare is starting to, some of the alternative, not really alternative, but some of the other types of groups are starting to leave. So we're keeping the case curve flat. However, there's still that bumpy road they talked about, those landmines, they're still there, right?
they're not going anywhere.
No, no. Now you want to talk about this briefly. So again, for our pitcher friends, the 10-year government bond yields. So what is a 10-year government bond yield? I'm looking at this chart. It's been on a slow decline since January 2018, but you have some news for us. Just recently, this chart's a little bit outdated. Just recently, the bond yields have jumped. What is a 10-year government bond yield, and why has it jumped?
So the treasuries, these are kind of almost like a staple or a widely viewed indicator. So, whenever these T-bills get traded, they kind of tell us what the general direction of rates are going to be. There's a lot of them. There's 1, 2, 3, there's 3 month, there's 5 year, there's a whole bunch of them, but the 10 year is a very widely viewed one or watched one. And so as we kind of expected, rates have been declining, especially in the past few months. You can kind of see there on the curve, but in the last week or so, or 4 or 5 days, we've seen a bit of a spike in those bond yields. You could argue that perhaps it's a question of inflation starting to sneak in. The economy is recovering to a certain degree, which could be putting upward prices and upward pressure on prices. So that's something that has happened relatively quickly, almost like a 30-40% spike this week alone.
Wow.
Considering the low that we were at a few weeks ago. Again, it could very well stabilize. It's not a completely uncommon thing, but the curious piece about this that relates to your world is if that continues the trend, then it will impact rates. It will impact on GIC rates on my side. It'll impact mortgage rates on your side. These are kind of the things that you can watch to see what happens.
So 10-year government bond yields, rates go down. What happens on the mortgage market?
So generally speaking,
Generally,
yields go
absolutely
down.
generally speaking. Yeah, very important. Yep.
Yields go down, GIC rates come down, mortgage rates come down.
Okay.
Right? There are 30-year bonds, there are 3-year bonds. We're just going to talk about like in the middle range, which is the mostly common one. If we see a substantial spike that stays that way, that's the key piece. Not like a small spike and then it goes back and normalizes. Like if it goes and it stays that way, that indicates that the expectation is that in 10 years, things are going to be better than they were a few weeks ago.
Got it.
So that puts upward pressure on GICs. It puts upward pressure on mortgage rates, excuse me. So again, these are things that kind of market watchers look to see what's going to happen. What are the expectations? And economists around the world are going to be trying to make calls based on these movements.
Got it. Okay. All right. So this is something we got to look for, right? We got to watch this, see how things go. And yeah, if it's a good market indicator, that's what we got to be looking for. Love it. Good. All right, let's switch topics here. So NCAA sports. I'm a sports guy. You're a sports guy. However, we're not just going to talk about volleyball and football and all the other stuff. The reality of it is, from a business perspective, major conferences. So Big Ten, Pac-12. These are all the so there's 5 power conferences, they call them in the U.S. And of these power conferences, the television revenue, the sponsorship, the everything is $1 billion, probably more industry. Okay. So I heard the number the other day. The Nebraska football team gets 40 to 50 million a year just for being part of that conference, the Big Ten conference. So the money is insane. 100,000 people in stands. The Power Five is the Power Five. Basketball, football, March Madness, all this stuff. So some of these conferences are shut down. The SEC is still going. The ACC and the Big 12 are still going. So 3 of the 5 are still going. However, here's something that's happened just yesterday. Women's volleyball is an example. I coach girls volleyball. They have now canceled their national championship because they didn't have enough teams, because so many conferences have canceled. It's only really the Power 5 that are still left standing. All the other ones are pretty much canceled until either the spring or canceled outright. So this is going to have an economic impact that's going to ripple through, because these sports bring in a lot of money, a lot of money. So if you think about it, you cancel a national championship. Well, now you don't have hotel revenue. Well, now convention centers aren't being used. People aren't booking hotels. People are not going to restaurants. The list goes on. You're not flying places. You're not spending money in the arenas. You're not buying tickets. What do you think this means? Another one is, I know some of these football programs and sports programs help support the university itself,
A
right?
lot.
Yeah, dangerous, dangerous things that are going on here. What do you see happening down there? Because this is pretty epic. I think it's the right thing, by the way. I should say that,
Agreed. Agreed.
but
I think it's the
but
right
this is
call.
epic.
Yeah, I think player safety really comes down to the paramount piece here. I think they're probably worried about, well, A, I don't know if they actually have a plan on how to combat this. I don't even know
Yeah.
if you could create a bubble or anything of that nature. So it is probably the right decision. I don't think any university wants to be on the headline of, hey, a player died of the coronavirus because we decided to play sports.
No kidding.
That is
Yeah.
going to be that's a PR nightmare. But to your point, all the logistics that go into these programs, the driving revenues, the everything, the spirit of what it brings to those universities and the culture is monumental. And it's going to put a hundreds of millions and, like you said, billions of dollars hit on everything, right? And the question is, does it last for 1 year? Does it last for all the leagues? Does it, this becomes very, very ugly very quickly.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
And that's it. This is really this is there's just this dangerous ripple effect. I was thinking about, and listen, these are student athletes. I get it. They are there as students first. However, we have people, there are coaches making millions of dollars in income. Okay. I know in women's volleyball, and I'm not, talking behind people's back, it's out there. The top schools in the Big Ten, there's two or three of them, the coaches are making mid six figures. That's women's volleyball. That's the money it brings in. Football, I mean, Saban down in Alabama, I think he's the highest paid. What's is he? I'm guessing 3, 4, 5, 6 million a year, at least, bare minimum, probably. So you've got this money machine, right, off these student athletes that has now shut down. What happens? What about scholarships? There's no one out there now to go buy tickets. But then again, tourism, travel, um, the companies that make the merchandise with the school's stuff on it.
yeah,
Now all of a sudden we don't have to make football jerseys and shirts. It's just a big ripple effect. So I think this is going to be, there are some small towns possibly that could just not shut down, but pretty darn close. What about the restaurants in these little college towns, right?
hundreds of players that go through these teams, through these cities, that's revenue that's lost.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, I think there's also a political piece to this that we were kind of chatting about before that I'm curious to see if it has anything to do with it. Because I know you, like you said, you follow sports. So there's been chat around paying these players, or at
Yes.
least paying some of these players, because some of these players are bringing in insane amounts of revenue because they're going to be the number one pick or they're highly touted picks. And so that's kind of something that's going through it as well. I'm curious to see, are they using this as a way of trying to bargain or to, say, you know what, we don't want to go down this road. It just seems very haphazardly put together. And I'm sure there's moving pieces that we don't know about, but I don't know.
There's a lot of money there's a lot of money at stake here, like billions. I'm sure billions, by me saying billions and billions of dollars, I'm not off base. It's so I'm watching it closely, not only because my poor Minnesota Golden Gophers team is not playing anymore. It's more like I've been to that town, man. I know it's a pretty major U.S. town, but you've now lost all your professional sports and you've lost now your university sports. I don't know. I'm watching it from a fiscal standpoint just to see what happens, and going to a town, let's say like Minneapolis, where of course they had all the riots and the police stuff going on. It's, that's the last thing that town needs, but they haven't controlled it. So it is what it is, right? What are you going to do? It's unfortunately, it's not unfortunately, fortunately, it's safety first, man. Right. So
If you're
more
not
to
willing to
come.
do it, if you're not willing to do an 8 to 10 week quarantine of phase one, I don't know if you're going to get out of this. It is what it is.
Yeah, you're telling me you're going to fill your football okay, look, if I'm looking at the Big 12, all right, and we got Texas playing against Texas A&M. For those of you who don't know, that's probably a rivalry game, or Oklahoma, Texas, or whatever. You're telling me they're not going to they're going to play in front of an empty stadium. They're going to not bring in all those fans and make all that money. I'd bet a good $10 that ain't going to happen. So
Big 10, eh? Wow. You're a big gambler there.
Yeah,
How many
exactly.
people do you think they stick in one of those stadiums? 90,000?
Michigan, the big house, I believe they get 110.
Yeah. That
Right.
seems like a pretty good idea. Stuff them all in there, you
You
know?
know, exactly. And
Darwin.
then you've got, yeah, exactly. Then you got Nebraska threatening to go to the Big 12 to play games. It's a mess. It's a mess. So, Sam, what's going on this week, buddy? Any major things?
Nothing too major. I mean, we're waiting on some economic data that's coming out today. I'm at this point, it seems like every Thursday we talk about unemployment numbers. They came in a little bit better this week, which is good. It's all about hopefully inching towards the right direction.
Yep,
That's what it all comes down to.
exactly. As long as, and I think that's exactly, as long as it's going the right direction, right, and not getting worse, I think that's probably the best you can hope for. So,
Yeah.
Sam, have a wonderful week. Listen, I'm going to be expecting not to hear from you much this week because you're working on your backdrop for next week. Okay. So get on it, buddy. Get on it.
All right, buddy.
Folks, have an awesome week. And if there's anything you need from either Sam and I, you know where to find us. Have a great one. Bye bye.